All right, so I've just pressed record, and then yeah, that will turn into a file at the end. So that's all right. So but are you I got my dates wrong. I'm so sorry.
No, it
Oh,
actually suited me better, because when I looked and I thought, well, that's Saturday, and I thought, because I couldn't have guaranteed being home by 3:30. So yeah, it worked much better.
yeah, okay, because I was like, hang on, did I say the 2nd or the 3rd? And then yeah, and then you were talking about 3:30 finishing work, and then yeah. So yeah, sorry about that, but I'm glad that you could make it today. So first of all, I'll start off by saying hi Jan, thank you for being part of the Australian Adoption Podcast and wanting to share your story today. And you're from New Zealand?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you are my first international story on the podcast, so I'm really excited. So thank you. Now, you've always known that you were adopted, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Well, as far back as I can remember.
So do you remember what age it was and when you were told?
I can't remember being told, but I've been thinking about that, and I assume it was probably round about 7 or 8, because I think I went to school and gave it in my morning talk. And my mother said, Mum, my adoptive mum said to me, you don't need to do that. And I said, well, I was wanted. And so that must have been how she explained it to me. So I'm guessing around that age, 7, 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was all so much part of our lives with all three of us being adopted that it could have been mentioned before.
Yeah.
And, just there all the time.
Yeah. That sounds very familiar, because that is a similar story to me. I told that news at Show and Tell News when I was adopted, and it was like, yeah, I had this big sort of smile on my face, and yeah, the teacher was sort of a bit mixed. I think she got upset, actually. She told Mum that she got upset afterwards. So yeah, so
funny.
Such a bittersweet sort of announcement, isn't it?
Well, it is, but when you're young, it's just, well, it's what it is, isn't it, really? Just, you don't feel, we were never made to feel as if we weren't part of the family. I had an auntie with 3 adopted children, and she made special allowances because they were adopted. And my mother, it was her sister, and she used to feel that perhaps that would make the children feel different from other people, No.
Yeah, interesting. So about 7 or 8. Can you tell us a little bit about your adoption journey and what your adoptive family was like growing up?
Right. Well, I was born in 1953, and in New Zealand, that was before there was any government departments to take care of adoptions. So it was my adoptive mum and dad were actually too old, shouldn't have been able to adopt me. But because they were personal friends of the woman who was the matron at Bethany Hospital, which was the unmarried mothers hospital the Salvation Army ran, they got preferential treatment, and they were able to ask for a girl. And so I was born, and my mother looked after me for a fortnight, and then mum and dad came, my birth mother, then mum and dad came from Tokoroa and picked me up, took me home. My oldest brother was 9, and he says to me, I can remember you crying all the way from Auckland to Tokoroa, which was about 3.5 hours in the car. And he said to our mum, why is Janice crying? And she said, oh, probably she's hungry. And in those days, they had no concept about the bond between the mother and child. So that's how it started off. And I was my mother's birthday present. The next year on the 26th of April, all the papers were signed in the court in the next neighbouring town. And so to all intents and purposes, I was gone from Carol Ann Sylvester to Janice Brunt.
And what age was that?
That was 6 months.
Yeah.
That was the official signing over. And yeah, life was just, I was very fortunate in the fact that everything just rolled on. There was so many adoptions and adopted people in our immediate family that there was no feeling of ever being any different. We didn't talk about it as a family. I was thinking today, one of my brothers, I've never ever really mentioned it to him. And the other brother has gone on a journey of his own. And yeah, and life was, well, as far as I know, life was just like any other family. I must have made comments, however, because at 15, Mum said to me, did I want to find out about my family? So, or about my birth mother. So she took me to Bethany, where the lady was still the matron, because I guess it was only 15 years. And she told me about my mother, which actually turned out to be completely wrong. So everything she told me was not correct. So I don't know whether just so many came through or they didn't keep records. And then from then on, I just settled down and got married and had children and did all the normal things. And yeah, never, because you never know any different, I didn't really miss the bond that a mother has with her child. And that's something that I know now from a mother's standpoint, but I've never had it from a child's standpoint, which I found quite interesting. I never felt really bonded to my mother, to my adoptive mother. Didn't make any difference at the time, doesn't now. But it's just interesting to think that bond was never actually there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and perhaps some of that may be because my birth mother looked after me for the first 2 weeks. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really given that bit a lot of thought. But yeah, so life was just as normal.
Wow,
well, as far as I knew.
Yeah. So you had this quite kind of really fortunate upbringing, and you had brothers that were adopted as well, and they were much older than you. But it was never sort of spoken about in the home. Everything was quite normalized, but not spoken about. But then you later on in life, you decided to find out more information about your birth family at age 38. Why that particular time in your life?
I don't know. It may have been coming up to my marriage breaking up. Part of it was that I decided to join Jigsaw. And I don't know if you had Jigsaw in Australia. I don't think you did. It was before they changed the access laws to your records. And Jigsaw was an agency in New Zealand, totally staffed by volunteers who traced and contacted and put together birth parents and children that had been adopted. And they did this, as I said, on a volunteer basis by birth dates and names and just things that the people could supply you with. And I started down that track and volunteered to work for them. And I did a lot of phoning, taking phone calls, a lot of men looking for their children, a lot of children looking for their mothers and being the first point of contact. And I thought, well, I'm doing all this and I haven't really done a lot myself. So I started to dig into what the Salvation Army had told me and found out that they were on the wrong side of New Zealand for a start. So I didn't find it particularly difficult to trace my birth mother. And the lady I worked with at Jigsaw made the initial phone contact.
Okay.
And I'm just getting my timeline here. I think before that, I wrote to her. And she wrote back and told me all about my father and his family and nothing about herself, which I found quite fascinating. So from then, I got in touch with her by phone, and I'm still trying to remember the time sequence. Yes, to start with, it was writing letters, and they were quite regular. And then I got in touch with her by phone, and then we met.
Wow.
But it started with going to Jigsaw.
Yeah. And how old were because you've got 2 children, don't you? How old were they when you were 38?
My daughter was 17 and my son was 14.
Yep. And did that play a little bit of a part in, contributing to their history by finding out about your birth family, like wanting to
yes
find out for them as well?
See who they looked like?
Yeah.
There was that what's the name, hereditary illnesses, you see, which is something that back in my day you got nothing except if you got your birth certificate, it gave you your mother's name and your name at birth, and that was it. That was all the record you got. And so you finding out for the kids any hereditary illnesses was important, and who they look like, and where Tina got her ability to do music by ear, and an ability with art, just this sort of stuff. Is where does it come from? Because it certainly isn't me, not either of them. So and it wasn't my husband's family either. The art would have been, but the music certainly wasn't. So just that curiosity.
Yeah, it definitely comes up in my household when my kids, it could be on a weekly basis where you sort of say, oh, that's, and things remind you of certain people. And genetics does play a part. And if you don't have that, that knowledge or information, it is a bit of a gap in sort of working out, which lineage are they sort of addressed to more? Is it my mum or my dad? And you can't really do that when you have adoptive parents in terms of physical traits and even some mannerisms as well. So when you found your when you spoke to your birth mother over the phone, and then you met her and the family, what did you discover?
What did I discover? Well, I discovered that I was the oldest of 10, which was a bit of a shock. Although when I first got the letter and she detailed my siblings, my husband at the time said to me, wow, you always said you were from a big family. But I'd never ever thought that there would be 10 of us.
So you had a feeling you were part of a big family, even though you didn't know any of that, right?
No, I just had a feeling.
Yeah.
And so when we met up, my daughter came with me, and who I thought was my half sister came with my birth mother. And during the conversation, there was a lot of laughs and getting to know each other. And during the conversation, she said to me, I would really like you to meet my youngest 4 children. I don't really care if you never meet my older 5 children, but I'd really like you to meet my youngest 4 children. And driving home to Auckland, we were talking about it, and we were saying, why would she say that? And, you'd think that she'd want me to meet all of them. But it turned out that the youngest 4 children were also fathered by my father. So the family was, split. They were all brought up together in the same house except for me, but they were 3 different fathers involved with the family. And the youngest 4 are my full brothers and sisters, which was a bit of a revelation when I did find out, which was not from her.
Wow.
As
Oh
it
my
happens.
gosh. That's crazy. So let's talk about this sort of family tree. So you've got you are number 1, so you're the eldest.
Yep.
And how old was your birth mum when she had you?
She was 17 when she had me.
Okay. And then that kind of relationship didn't work out, but then can you
Well, he ran away when he
Yeah.
found out she was pregnant.
Right. So okay. And then, so there's 10 kids. How many fathers?
3.
3 fathers. You were the first,
Yep.
but then there's another father in between. Well, let's just talk about the family tree. So I've got it here, but I've got your mum. Can I say their names?
I don't see why not. First names, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So you've got your mum, Ellen, your birth
Yep.
mum.
Yep.
And your birth father, Stuart.
Yep.
Had you and 3 other children.
4.
4 other children. Then, wait.
No.
This is because then Stuart comes back into the scene, doesn't he? Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe it's best if you explain it.
Okay.
Yeah.
They had me, and then my birth mother had my half sister, my oldest half sister, and she has never told my half sister what her father's name was. So the next one to me sits as a half sister to every one of us. And then my mother married when my half sister was about 13 months old and had 4 children to Murray, who was her husband. And then they shifted back to Napier, and she met up again with my birth father, and the next 4 children are my father's. So the youngest and the oldest belong to the same father. And when he passed away, I think 1987, they were engaged, but they never married. But the last thing she said to me was that she never realized what a bastard my husband and my father was until she met me. So I'm not quite sure what that meant, but I prefer it to think that she realized what she missed out on because of, and you know, how her life had gone. I don't know. But yeah.
So that's why she left him and then got married to someone else. But then when she came back to Napier, she sort of couldn't help her feelings.
I think that was it.
Yeah. And had 4 more children. So when you did meet her, I'm just curious, as she said, you can meet your 5 half siblings, but you can't meet your full siblings.
The other way round. The
Okay.
youngest 4 are my full siblings.
Yeah.
So she wanted me to meet them, but she didn't really worry about the other 5 who were my half siblings.
Right. Okay. So because it says, so she said that you had no right to know your siblings, but only the half sibling that she was.
No, that was later. I think that I only actually met her in person, I think 3 times. And but every so often I would contact her. And I think the last contact I had, I sent her a photo of my first grandson. And she wrote back and she said, you know, I've got my family, you find your own family, and you have no right to be contacting my family.
Right.
So, or words to that effect. You know, I've got the letters still. So I think that when she sat and thought about it, she decided there was quite a Pandora's box of a life that she'd lived that she didn't really want people to know. But as it turns out, all the children knew anyway. So it's yeah.
Wow. So what did it feel like when you found out you were a part of this huge family?
Well, it was, I suppose, to start with, you have this idea that, well, I've talked to my mother, my birth mother, and my half sister, as I thought, my sister, and everything was wonderful. Maybe they'll have a get together and we'll all catch up with each other and those that live in New Zealand, and you know, take it from there. So it was a bit exciting to start with, but then of course it went downhill quite. The honeymoon period was very short, and it kind of went downhill quite fast, where I think she realized that there were so many secrets coming out, because she was still very, very friendly with my paternal grandmother. She used to look after her and keep an eye on her. And my paternal grandmother had denied my existence. And there was all Ellen kept saying to me, if anybody would understand, it's your auntie Pat, who lives where she was living, Waiheke Island, and she would understand, but she'd never give me a contact for her. So I put an ad in the paper in Waiheke and said, you know, could this lady please contact me? And when she rang, I said to her, I am Ellen's daughter by your brother Stuart. And all she said was, the bastard, if he was still alive, I'd break his legs. Actually, more F's in there than I used. And it turned out that she had been caught in the same position as my birth mother, and Stuart had put huge pressure on her to give the baby up for adoption, which she did. And all the time he knew I was out there. So through her, I then got to know my paternal grandmother. And I guess for my birth mother, that was a little close to the line, you know, a bit scary, all this stuff coming out. And yeah, and I think that's when she sort of started running, a bit scared and a bit insecure about it all. So yeah.
But you said you got along well with Stuart's mum.
Oh, she was lovely. She was like going home, totally little Scots woman, totally unshockable. She just took it all on board. And yeah, it was like going home. There was a connection there. Even although until I sent her a photo of myself, she didn't believe I existed, because I'm quite like their side of the family. So yeah, and that was a lovely experience, well worth it, even just for that.
Yeah. What was she like?
How do you mean?
Like, I think you mentioned stoic and had the same kind of humor, and
yes, yeah, absolutely stoic. She'd come to New Zealand at 21 on her own and married a man that mistreated her, had 5 children, and then one day she was out hanging the clothes on the line, and when she'd only had the 2 children, and somebody came up and said, I'm from the welfare and we're about his other children in Auckland. There's a whole family of these people, you know. And we're about this other family in Auckland, and there were 2 daughters he had in Auckland, and his wife was looking for him, his first wife, to pay some maintenance of some sort. So that got sorted. Then there were 5 other children and with her. Then they separated, and things happened. And one day she was standing at the clothesline as an older woman, and a young guy walks up the drive and says, are you know, who she was? And she said, yes. And he says, I'm this guy, and I'm your ex-husband's son. So he wasn't looking for anything. He just wanted to meet her. So she'd had all these things happen in her life. So she was very stoic and very strong and totally unshockable. Nothing was a surprise to her. So yeah, met her a couple of times and spent some time with her, and she was lovely.
So you never got to meet your birth father then, Stuart?
No, birth father passed away in 1987, I think it was. So that was before I got into touch with any of them.
And Ellen, birth mum, is she still around?
No, she passed away in 2015.
Okay.
So I was, my daughter was 12 when Stuart passed away. So that was 87, yeah. And apparently they used to joke about having grandchildren. And they knew where I lived. He had done the research and found out where I lived. So, and who I was. There was lots of interconnections and families, and my father, my adoptive father, was my birth auntie's doctor in Tokoroa.
Oh, wow.
So there's lots of interconnected stuff. Very small country, New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so they found out where I was, but they never ever made any contact. So, and he had 2 grandchildren when he passed away. None of the other people had children, none of the other kids.
Okay. And do your siblings talk about your father, Stuart, to you? Like what he was like and
they didn't like him.
Okay.
Yes, they do. They when I see them, especially the oldest one of the 4 that were full, because the whole family knew him well, because he started visiting quite openly when she went back to Napier. And Murray, her husband, and he became quite good friends. And so the kids knew him, and they had figured out at some point that he was the father of the younger 4.
So that's like a whole different story, isn't it?
It is well away from adoption, really.
So did Murray and Stuart, they got along, but did they ever find that out? That
I don't know. I don't know. The theory in among the children, the ones that have just talked to me about it, which is mainly the older one of those 4, is that Murray knew or guessed, but brought the 4 up as his own. And they all have a very high regard for Murray and quite a low regard for Stuart, which I think is probably well earned.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were reuniting with all of your birth family, what was that like on the home front for you, like with your husband and your kids? Like, how did they handle the reunion and the reconnection and things for you?
Well, my husband didn't handle it well at all. He had similar experiences in his life prior to meeting me, and they'd left him, I think, probably a little bit traumatized. And so I don't know whether he felt it was a threat. I think a lot of partners feel threatened when the other partner goes on this sort of a journey and finds a whole other family, and so it didn't go down well with him at all, and we ended up splitting up. The kids thought it was a big adventure. They thought it was great finding out, about who I was and who they were, and from that part of the family. So yeah, it was just.
So what was that like for you? You're deciding to go on this journey to meet your birth family. You find out all these massive revelations in finding them, and then at the exact same time your marriage starts to break down. What was that? Did that just feel like a massive upheaval for you? What did that feel like at that time, and how long did that go for, that kind of process?
The marriage breakdown, probably well, it was quite long. It started a long time before over other matters, but it was a huge upheaval. But in some ways, there was the excitement of finding out about my birth family, because a lot of it came more gradually. It was always something interesting to find out. And I think the marriage breakdown was kind of, at the stage it happened, as a bit of a relief, because it had been on the cards for a while. And to complicate it even more, my adoptive father passed away the same year.
Oh, you're kidding.
So it was, you know, pretty much, it was all a big mungle of stuff that, you know, and I probably went off the rails a little bit for a couple of years, and then sort of caught up with myself and carried on.
Yeah. And what that's so understandable for that to, yeah, when it rains it pours with those kind of things. What's your adoptive father's name, and what was he like?
John.
Yeah.
He was very dry and very stern, and he had a very, very dry sense of humor, and we were all a little bit, well, we're just respectful of him, but also other people were scared of him. My first husband said to me one time, I've learned how to handle your father. I'll just treat everything he says as a joke, and he'll tell me when he's serious. So that's the sort of guy he was. And but a lot of people who didn't know him, sorry, my grandson's crawling across the floor here like a toddler, because I told him he wasn't allowed upstairs. People who didn't know him thought he was very serious and stern, but no, he was good. Not emotional. And I've got this distraction. Get going, Sam. You can stand up and run. And yeah, not emotional. He wasn't affectionate. My mother used to say to me, your father loves you, he just doesn't know how to show it.
Yeah.
But he was never cruel or nasty. And my mother made up for all the way that he didn't show it, she did. So.
And what was her name? Marion?
Marion, yeah.
Yeah. And so you didn't have that bond, but as a whole family unit, you were very fortunate and lucky, and you just enjoyed your experience. With that.
I think very, very, very fortunate with the people, with the family that adopted us. The boys and I were fortunate with the parents that we were adopted by.
Yeah.
Yes. And when I first got in touch with my half sister, the one that's next to me in age, she said to me, wow, you dodged a bullet. We're very much the same. I think we're kind of quite plain spoken. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, because our mother liked having babies, but when they came home, they were handed over to myself. Once we were old enough, they were handed over to myself and the next sister down to do all the night shift.
Oh, wow.
So, and she was, when the youngest one was born, she was 16, I think. I would have been 19, yeah.
Yeah. Bit of chaos when you got that many children in the house. And
oh, huge.
Yeah, that's big. So she must have that same sense of humor that you do as well then.
Yes, she does. I think most of them do. I've spoken or had contact with all except one. And I will do that one day, but it doesn't feel right for some reason. And he's the youngest one.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't know why.
So you keep in contact with all still except one?
Yeah, no, I keep in contact with my half sister closest to me.
Yep.
The next one lives in London, and we kept in contact for a while, and then you lose touch. And there's The next brother, I have only met him and had contact with him once. The next two I do periodically around Christmas, you know, send them an email and they send one back.
Yep.
My youngest sister's very hard to pin down. My youngest brother, I've not had contact with, and the other two, anytime I contact them, they come back to me. So it's there and it's not, and it's there and it's not.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
generally you've had good like response
Yes.
and a good relationship with all the
Yes.
siblings. Yeah. But when you first, I guess when you first found out about the news that you were in such a big family, was it a bit daunting at the start to meet all of the siblings, just working out, you know, are you going to be accepted, rejected?
Yes.
Yeah. What was that like?
Just exactly what you said. I had to work on it because I contacted them all one by one, and I would go through a period of time of thinking, I'd really like to get in touch with this person. Oh, how do I do it? What's the response going to be? And I'd agonize over it. And a couple of times my current husband has said to me, look, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to go down this track? And I'd write the email or write a letter or pick up the phone, and they were always fine. And I'd think, wow, I needn't have worried, but it still happens. And even now, recontacting them, if I haven't been in touch for a period of time, even going back to them and sort of saying, hey, how are you? I still wonder what the response is going to be. And I think part of that was generated by the response I got from Alan. You know, warm, go away, you have no rights. And I think it put me back in that place each time.
Yeah. So every time now, you're probably going to get a good response, but you still prepare for rejection.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You protect yourself. Well,
yeah.
I protect myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very common. Well, I say that, but I'm agreeing with that because I have that too. On a lot of things. You know, it sort of comes in and you have to try and filter it out, and
and not just your family.
No.
Other things that you think, well, I'll try this or I'll do that, and should I?
Yeah.
What's people's reactions going to be? And
Yep. I know that all too well.
I'm sure.
The last one was just going back to I guess when you were finding your birth family. It says, you know, you still had such a loyalty to your adoptive family that precluded you into finding them as well, as part of the reason why you know, you were asked at 15, but you still had all that curiosity your whole life.
Yeah.
And at third, it was sort of like, you kind of waited till that age, 38, to find all this out. What does that loyalty sort of feel like and look like for you and your family, especially because you've got two other brothers that have adopted as well?
Well, for me, it was just, I felt guilty because I had been given so much with mum and dad, with the lifestyle. I mean, my father was a professional, my adoptive father, a professional. So there was never any shortage of stuff, as in we weren't spoilt, but we had a house that we lived in. We had a batch at the beach. He had a boat. You know, we had a couple of cars, stuff that the other kids that I went to school with back in the 60s just didn't have. And we had all the love and security, huge security, and always. And you feel guilt. I felt guilty that I wanted to find these other people that were part of me, but hadn't contributed anything except really birth, which is actually everything. So that's a bit of an anomaly. But yeah, there was a lot of guilt and disloyalty. Am I being disloyal, wanting to find out about these other people? And so after I'd done it all, and before I met my birth mother, but after I'd been in touch with her, I sort of went round and saw mum and dad for lunch one day, and I said to them, well, I've been in contact with my birth mother. And my mother says to me, oh, what's she like? So I told her what I'd found out. And I told her that I was mainly Irish and, well, pretty much a lot of Irish and a bit of Scots. And she said to me, oh, I knew you were too loud just to be a Scot. You know, but she was a Scot. And yeah, she wrote my birth mother a letter thanking her for me. So, and she would have liked to have met her, but of course, my birth mother was Ellen was a little bit reticent about anything like that. So that never happened. So all my guilt and my feeling of disloyalty was not viewed that way by mum and dad. They just thought that this was a normal part of what I could be doing, which I'm glad I felt that guilt and disloyalty. You know, I'm glad I felt enough for them to feel that, but I'm also very glad that they didn't see it that way.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that it, you know, it came up as a conversation, and then it sort of dissipated what you have probably thought all along. Yeah, that was the same for me with my kids. I hadn't told them that I was adopted, and I was doing that because I didn't want to tell, I didn't want them to change their view of my adoptive mum, because they obviously just know her as grandma, nana, and I wasn't going to tell them until she passed away. But then when all this upheaval came for me, I felt the need to tell my kids. But I wanted to ask my adoptive mum first, and she turned around and said, oh, don't they know? I thought they already knew. And I was like, this whole time I was just stressing and fretting and feeling guilty and feeling so sorry for her if she would get upset. And what would it be like for her, for her grandchildren to know that she's not, you know, that there's more to the story. And but it was as if all of that was just all in my head, and all this concern and compassion and care, and like that's the same as you. I'm glad I have that. And once it got brought to the table, I thought, oh wow, okay, gosh, well that was an easy, easy hurdle.
It wasn't hard at all.
Like, just over it goes. Yeah, I just thought it was going to be this massive thing. So yeah, I can totally relate to that, and I think a lot of adoptees would feel exactly the same, have that loyalty. And that brings me to that question with your brothers, because I know when we were on the phone a couple of days ago, you were saying that one of them was not interested in finding out, and that sort of thing. Like, is there a loyalty with him?
Yeah, well, you know, they say that there are the two types of people who are adopted. You know, you either act out or you're compliant. I don't know if you've ever read any of Nancy Verrier's books, but she was writing, she was an adoptive mother who was also a psychologist, I think. And she did a lot of exploration in the fact that quite often adopted children, they fall into two groups. They're either compliant, which is because they don't want the adoptive parents to reject them again, you know, like their birth mother did. So they're compliant and they do stuff that they want, you know, because they don't want to upset the apple cart. And then you get the ones that act out by just being naughty, to push the boundaries. And my oldest brother and myself were quite compliant. But my middle brother, the one that doesn't want to know about his birth family or didn't want to know, he was an actor outer. He was just, a truant. He got into trouble with the police on a what's name level, just a normal kid level, and all this sort of stuff. And but he was the one that just said, no, they're my mum and dad, and I don't want him to know anything about anybody else. And that was his thing. And yet my oldest brother and myself, who were the compliant ones, both had the curiosity to find out about our birth families, which I find quite fascinating, because even though David's 74, and it was only when mum and dad passed away, I got all the paperwork and among their papers for the adoption certificates for all of us. And so I sent them off to one off to my brother, the oldest brother. I kept the younger brother, the next brothers, because I didn't know whether he'd want it, whether he'd throw it away or what he'd do with it. So I just held on to it. And they contacted me when their son wanted to go to England to get the adoption certificate, because they needed it to be able to get him a work visa in Britain. So, and they're in Tasmania. So, yeah.
So
and yet he's the one that, no interest. I don't want to know. She didn't want me. Stuff her.
wow, that's really interesting. Who was the author?
Writer.
What was the book called?
Nancy Verrier.
How do you spell the
Yeah, I think it's VERRIER or IAR.
Okay, I'll look it up. I might post that.
Yeah, she's very interesting, and what interested me with it is that she was an adoptive mother who was doing the research on behalf of her adopted daughter. She wanted to know why her daughter was acting out, and it was, I remember what it's called, what the book's called. I could find the name of the book and email it to you anyway. But yeah, it's she's worth reading. Oh, well, for me, she was.
Yeah, because that's, I mean, saying that, an adoptee falls into two categories is interesting, because I was compliant, but I've been curious my whole life, and I'm still kind of going with all of that. So yeah, that resonates with me and how I was brought up. But not always wanting to know, always wanting to search and know. It's almost like a bit of an adventure.
Yeah.
Your life, and you're uncovering all these things.
Yeah.
And other people's lives, they have a certain predictability about who they are and where they come from and their identity. And whereas, for us, it's quite a jigsaw puzzle, and I'm keen to find those missing pieces and put them back in, and it's quite fun doing it,
Yeah, and hence the name Jigsaw for the
volunteer
group I went to.
Yeah.
That no longer exists, because with the opening up of the birth records, you didn't need people like the Jigsaw workers to put you together, because you could just go and apply for your birth certificate, get your mother's birth name, and Bob's your uncle. But I find it fascinating, and I used to like the bit where you could always say when mum had been nasty to you and made you eat something, you could always say, my real mother wouldn't make me do that. Only to find out that she probably would have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, that's so
but yeah, it is an adventure, and every bit adds to a little bit more of the picture.
Yeah. And I'm even sort of looking into just as an adoptee, how much of their personality has changed because they know that they're adopted, versus what they would be like if they weren't adopted, or how much has my personality influenced, how much has adoption influenced my personality and the direction that I'm going in with my career, my personal professional life, the way I speak and relate to others, whether you're a people pleaser, or you're a, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's quite interesting. It is a sort of getting to know yourself and working out, oh, am I trying to do this because of that reason? Is there some
Yeah.
ingrained thing within my system that I need to address? Or
Mm.
yeah, lots of things like rejection and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And it's
grief and
yeah. Yeah. And it's fascinating, because I've been sort of thinking about that too. You know, what would I be? Even things like the older child, youngest child. I was born an oldest child, but I was brought up a youngest child, you know, and,
yeah,
so
that's a
does
spin
that
out.
affect? Does
Yeah.
that, because people are saying there's certain traits. And Gwenda said to me, my sister said to me something one time, and I said to her, oh, yes, you see, you already knew the womb had been used by somebody else. And she said, I wonder if I did.
Mm,
There's all that, and there's things like genetic memory, where certain things that traumatic things that happen to your birth mother or people before that come through in you. It's all sorts of interesting things out there that affect, well, not just adopted people, but everybody. But yeah, that you don't know. For example, my birth mother had a very traumatic childhood. So is there traits that come through into me, but from that, from her? Yeah, I find it very fascinating.
yeah, it is. And it's worth exploring too, because curious people like yourself and myself just want to keep going, keep diving, keep
Yeah.
getting deeper, and and just really trying to work it all out. But the more that I interview people, and the more that there's things that you have in common with someone, and sharing the same sort of thing. But like what we spoke about today is what's been coming up for me is how much of my personality is linked to adoption. There's like a part of it is me doing this adoption podcast. I mean, that is a direct link as to why I'm
Yes.
doing it. And it's now a big part of my life. So but it's been good. It's been really positive, and sounds like you've had a positive, mostly positive experience as well with your
Well, yeah. Yeah, I
discovery.
have. And I know what I need to know. I've found out a lot. When Alan died, I watched it on a computer, actually, the funeral service. And then they contacted me and said they were going to scatter her ashes, that I want to go down to Napier and scatter her ashes with them. So Mike and I went down to Napier, and we're out there. We've not got permission to scatter it. That was on the West Shore, which is on the beach, and they were saying, oh, we don't understand. Why would it be on West Shore? And then some bright one comes up with, oh, it might have been where Jan was conceived. That's why she wants to be put out here, you see. And we were out there on the rock, and people were staring at us, and my two sisters were trying to decant some of the ashes to send to England. And everybody was laughing and was throwing them around, and don't throw them here, the wind's blowing, and and there was only, I think, 4 or 5 of the family there, but it was very part of, it felt good.
Yeah.
So, but
So you don't what's the word? What is the word? Like if you had your time over, you'd still do the same thing, or would you
yeah,
find them sooner, or would you do it differently?
I don't know, because the way you do it, when you do it, is right for you.
Yeah.
Like, I think, if I remember rightly from the introductory interview you did with yourself, you kind of doorstopped your mother am I correct in remembering that you went up to her? Was it your mother or one of them?
Yeah.
Knocked on her door, I mean, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, when I listened to that, I thought, oh, hey, I couldn't have done that. I had to have that letter writing phone call first, you know, and I thought that was amazing. I wish I could do that because it kind of answers all your questions, you know, even if it's a pretty confronting experience. Whereas I thought, no, I can't do it. I've got to sneak in slowly and then adapt myself to what I'm learning, you know. So I don't think I would have done it any differently because I don't think I could have. You know, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, you
I
did
wish
it.
I wish I could.
You did it in the way that feels comfortable to you, and you know, with my circumstance, you know, having a birth mum with paranoid schizophrenia and just homeless and drug addict and all the rest of it. I won't go too much into that, but she wouldn't. I wouldn't know where to write to. I wouldn't know where she wouldn't. She, as far as I know, she's limited in reading and she wouldn't know how to write, or she doesn't know how to text on her phone. She only just got a phone a year or two ago, and she's like in her 60s, so she only knows how to make phone calls to me and a couple of other people. That's about the extent of it. So I think different circumstances and different approaches, and I think I just when I have an urgency to do something, it's got to be done yesterday, so it's got to be like I've got to do it. So otherwise
it's interesting. So I don't know whether I would have done anything any differently. Maybe I would have included mum before I did. Then maybe she could have met Ellen, but that could have scared the bejesus out of Ellen, and that could have been no, you know, that might have been the end of everything. So I think that you do what's right for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, well done. That's great. This has been a fantastic interview.
Oh, do you think so?
Yeah.
Come back. I've got lots more stories.
Well, it has to get condensed down to about 30 to 40 minutes. So so how long have we been? So it's been 70 minutes.
Yeah.
So we've covered all of the questions that I wrote down in the email.
I've got that here.
And then you've given us some really good information about, you know, what it was like in New Zealand in terms of adoption and finding out through Jigsaw, and then with the Nancy book, maybe send me a text with the title of that book, and I might add it to your post. And then after, when I go around to editing, or you can send a couple of photos that you would like me to share on social media.
Oh, okay.
And you can take your time with that. We've got ages until your episode, so a couple of photos, and are you on
just of myself or
whatever you want, you want. So you'll hear the story, the first round of edits of the story, and then, you know, it might just come to you the right photo that you would like to share, whether it be just any, whether it's like your adoptive family, whether it's just you, whether it's it'll come to you.
Which one?
But no, it was great. Thank you.
Good. I've enjoyed meeting you.
It was lovely meeting you as well.
And I'll get you the title of that book and the right spelling for Nancy's name, although I'm sure she'll be on your Googler and she'll pop up. She's quite well known.
I'll do that now. I'll I might actually find it straight away as soon as I Google that name.
You should do. My brother's done a lot. He's a counsellor, my oldest brother, in a particular, I don't know what is counselling, it's couples counselling, but I'm surprised how often you find. I did counselling courses. I was going to do a counselling course for adoptees, as in for counselling people, because I find with some things like that, you kind of heal yourself as well. You know, I think a lot of people do it for themselves, not actually for their clients, if you get my drift. And I
Yeah.
think my brother's like that. I think he's come through a lot by doing the counselling, and he read her first. I put him on to her, and that's what got him going down that way. So
Yeah, wow. And
yeah,
so, and that's the other thing, like, you know, your career and your, you know, if he's gotten into counseling, that if he wasn't adopted or if he didn't know or any of that,
yeah,
might have had a different career path.
yeah,
Just,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, well, his is a late career. He was a teacher first, but yeah, which is actually when he found out his birth family, he found out his brother's a teacher. So there you go.
Oh, right.
Interesting stuff.
Wow. Okay. Well, if your brother ever wants to share, he knows he can contact you
Oh
through.
well, I'll let him know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure he might be interested. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
And I have other people here. I have a friend who's a birth mother, and lots. Anyway,
Okay. Well, yeah,
um,
I'm here. So, and if not, just you can obviously you can share your episode. So I'll send your episode through text.
yep.
And it will come up, and all you can do is you could just copy and share it far and wide to all your friends and
Oh,
family.
okay. Well,
And
I think personally you're doing an amazing thing, and thank you.
oh, thank you. No, thank you. I'm actually getting more. I think I'm getting a lot of benefit out of just meeting people and being able to share, and for them,
Mm,
for someone
mm,
like yourself to share back as well.
mm.
I really enjoy it. I love listening to people's stories, and it's very healing. And I'm hoping that I can create like an online community presence. So, you know, you feel that you're not alone.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's well needed, because the more they open up, like in New Zealand, with the opening up of the records, the groups like Jigsaw, who also had meetings where adopted people and birth mothers could come for support, have gone by the wayside. Now it's you get your birth certificate. They have a counselling session with somebody before they'll give you your birth certificate. You get your birth certificate, and then anything else you go to social welfare, which is really not ideal at all, or a private counsellor.
No,
So as
not
far as I can track down in New Zealand, there's really nothing as a group. Maybe it's something I should put my thinking hat on for. We'll see.
yeah, it's worth looking into. And do you know just offhand like how many adoptions New Zealand sort of approves of every year, or is it a high rate, a low rate?
No, it's low now,
Yeah.
because the DPB's there, and people are well, they've realised that it's not actually ideal. It's very hard for people to adopt children in New Zealand, and quite often it's the open adoptions that are, which is fine, but the mother picks the couple. So you could have a couple that are ideal for adoption, but and they've got a girl that is pregnant wanting to give her child up for adoption, but it's hard to find a couple that she feels will give the child the start that she would like it to have. So it's quite I haven't done a lot of research lately, but it's certainly not like it was in my time. And I think it works, but there's very, very few compared to what there used to be, which is probably a good thing, you know.
It's the
But
same in Australia. It's, I think in 2017, the statistics were a few hundred,
yeah,
390 or something like that, 94,
yeah,
and then maybe 4 Indigenous adoptions. But the thing is that the stats kind of don't add up, because if you've got 40,000 children misplaced,
mm,
and they need 4,000. Adopt Change the other day was saying they need 4,000 homes because there are children now under 5 and some children between under 12 months who are in residential care. So that's care that's like in a group home where they've got,
like
carers just kind of doing shift work. I just, it's just such a I know back in the day there was a lot more adoptions, and we've got to be careful with forced adoptions and that whole history in Australia. But I feel like it's now been like gone the other extreme, where there are actual kids that do need this and needs to be properly executed. Because, from 2017, having less than 400 adoptions, but 40,000 kids kind of just, we don't know what's going on with them. In terms of permanency. That's, I don't know, it kind of doesn't sit well with me, especially I've got a great adoption story and you've had a great upbringing too. So it's just, I feel like
I think
it's a missing out.
I think possibly they kind of went off track when the emphasis became trying to keep them within the family that they were born into. In New Zealand, it's a bit like that, because quite often the entire family is dysfunctional, and we've had kids that have been left with the family, left with the grandmother, and the grandmother has killed them, and so they should be removed. I feel they would benefit by being taken and put into a better environment. But if you suggest that, it's often shock horror. You can't do that. That's taking the rights off the families. And I know in the Maori community in New Zealand, they don't often and never really have gone through the normal adoption process. They have a thing called whānau, which is the child is taken within the family and given to an auntie or a cousin or a sister, and quite often those are very successful. Other times they're not so successful. The Europeans don't seem to have the same sort of thing. The kids, I don't know how many they've got living in homes, foster children, and they've got no permanence. They've shifted from home to nothing. And you would think that they would be better placed in, they do guardianship in New Zealand. I don't know if they do that in Australia.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, where people are granted permanent guardianship of the child, which I suppose is a sort of a way of a split the difference.
Yeah.
But that even is hard to get, I think. And it seems that it's not the child that's that's the main concern. It's the others around it. Seem to be can't do that because.
I don't know. And it's not, and every adoption, every case is it's always very grey, but in my circumstance it was black and white. It was like, we got to get her out of here. So fortunately for me it was like that, but it still took 4 years. Courts to kind of go through that thing. And I remember my mum, my adoptive mum and my birth mum met, and they were having a chat at the park, and I was sort of sitting on my adoptive mum's lap, and I had a bracelet around my wrist, and my birth mum said, you must really love her, don't you? And my adoptive mum said, yes, I do. And like, she was pointing to the bracelet, as in like, I guess to sort of say, oh, like, you're sort of really caring for her if she's got this nice sort of bracelet around her wrist. So, and then that was when she did all the approvals. So, but up until that point, I think my birth mum was just sort of no, like, and they gave her that right for quite a long time, even though she was very sick. So I can't imagine someone that is like a birth mum that is not having mental illness, but struggling in some way. It would be very grey to remove that child and have them adopted. So it is very difficult.
Yeah.
Decision.
Yeah, it's a hard decision for everybody, isn't it? I know for me, I think in my day when I was born, the mother didn't have to sign the child away for, I know my brother's mother didn't sign him away until he was 4. She was determined that because he was born in the war years, towards the end of the war. So she was determined that, I guess maybe she thought the father was going to come home, I don't know. And so she wouldn't sign him away until she had to admit that there was no way. She must have married, I think she married, and the new husband wasn't interested. So my adoptive mum basically was in a fostering position for all that time before his birth mother would sign him away, which would have made it difficult for her as well, because you know, he was to all intents and purposes her child. So it's
absolutely.
very complicated.
Yep. It's tough all around, and I just hope I can, you know, gather lots of stories from multiple perspectives, and hopefully, you know, it can be useful for anyone.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be, and it's job well done. And like I said, thank you.
Oh no, thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch. But I want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Yes, you too.
Yeah, and I'll be in touch via text or email, just to give you updates as to when my editor will be working on it, and then we'll go from there.
Okay then, fantastic. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.